Now, I have to be careful wanting to affirm my own perspective, because very often being activated to set oneself in opposition to something else is a manipulative ploy to engage us in a battle. Let's say, for instance, this other individual has been battling with depression, but they don't realize that they have actually been feeding the depression, not wanting to integrate the depression's lessons, not wanting to admit to themselves that they have to learn something that's very, very, very difficult for them. By engaging me to set myself in opposition, they can manipulate me into feeding their depression for them. Let's say, for instance, they've reached an exhaustion point where depression is no longer an operative, functional way of being. But instead of learning the lesson for themselves, they want somebody else to teach them the lesson for them. That's fine. But when it comes to these internal processes and these internal personal lessons that we learn for our life, that feeling of fulfillment and true realization comes from within us. We've got to learn it individually, autonomously, specifically, particularly, not some general overview from someone else and we just take that on as ours, sort of like religion. You know, you're born into a religion, you just say, I'm going to take this on as myself, as who I am. You know, there's no thinking involved, there's no struggle, there's no development. You're just taking it on. It's sort of like sitting at an evening meal as a child and your parents just, you know, plop your food down in front of you, say, eat. No. That doesn't teach us anything. How did you get this food here? How did you cook it? Where did you get it from? What was the struggle that you made, that you took to achieve this meal that you've placed before me? And I find this very often a posture and a stance to people who are who are given a full cosmology. They're given a whole entire cosmology. They say, okay, I'm going to take this one on as mine. They're just gifted it. They're just given it. And they've never earned it for themselves. So they never really realize the depth development that occurs within. They can have little realizations and little processes, which is just fine. You know, and I don't want to make it seem like little is less than big when it comes to these developmental processes within us. Every development, every realization is a triumph. But I hope that I have shared a little bit of just how confusing it can be and how difficult a challenge it really is to try to have your own autonomy while still being in a relationship and showing respect and compassion and all those truly noble and majestic aspects of a human being that is in relationship with another human being. And some things you just got to cut your ties with and, you know, hope for the best. And I find this very interesting that I'm going through this in Libra. We've entered Libra now, and Libra, through one astrologer's terms and definitions, is very much rooted in multiple and various relationships. They thrive in having multiple and various relationships. But as it's an air sign, as with all air signs, they're detached. They have this detachment. So they can immerse themselves in all of these relationships but always have this sense of detachment from them. And this sense of detachment actually feeds their desire to want more relationships because they're never really connected. They have this lack of connectedness because they're up in the air, so to say. Whereas I'm a water sign, and water is interconnectedness with everything. So it's very important for me to it's very natural for me to be in a depth relationship at all times wherever I am, and this is nice. However, that the waters get muddied. It gets muddied waters, you know, and the autonomy is lost. So when I exercise my autonomy, it is often perceived from, since I'm a water sign, the air sign perceives my desire to be an autonomous individual as not done quite right, not done quite well. And that's because I'm coming from a place of depth relatedness. And when I look at an air sign and their relatedness, I see that that's not very deep. That's not very interrelated. That's more separated by something. There's a gap between. There's not a true connectedness. And these are very, very subtle nuances to each individual, which affirms a multiplicity. And it's not that I'm an astrologer or that I believe in astrology. It's just that I use these terms and phrases to better elaborate perspectives that are not necessarily ground pounding in your face objective. They're more inner processes. And a lot of people just don't like to mess with it, and I find that a lot of people don't like to mess with it because they're not processing their issues. They don't want to be self-aware. You know, when you become self-aware, there's more responsibility. But what are you responsible for? And when you look at the world as being so interdependent and interrelated, you realize, well, a lot of times you can think that nothing matters. That if we're all one, then there's no real victims, there's no real justice, there's no, all this stuff is like a play, a grand play. And we can just do our own thing and it doesn't really matter. And I don't prescribe to any of that. It's a both and rather than an either or. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest. Have a good day.